So we started off 2018 the same way as we finished 2017, fitting panels, but this time we could actually see what we're doing thanks to Bill providing us with the new lights for the shed. Well, this is a plan. This front's too crooked and too twisted and probably won't get it straight. And it's got quite a few nasty dents along the top. So I'm going to cut this out here and do the same on the other side. And then this good front over here and do the same here. Swap them over. And hopefully it'll be all smiles at the end of it. Well, let's see how it goes. So I just sort of jumped in and cut these panels out of this nose cone. I'm sort of still having second thoughts about it. Maybe I shouldn't have done. Not sure if I've got the skills to actually fix this, but let's see what happens. So when I was laying in bed thinking about how to get around these really bad twisted up front with the twin lights, I thought it just seemed so easy. I thought I'd just measure it out, cut them out, weld them back in, and away we go. I really did want to spend the $600 on an aftermarket one. I heard they were about 5 or 10 mil narrower, and they didn't fit exactly perfect. So I got in and finished them anyway, and I was pretty happy with the way they came out, and I was quite surprised they came out so well. So I still had to do the bodywork to them, which I wasn't looking forward to. I was just about, by this stage, well and truly over bodywork. And I actually gave in and purchased a new aftermarket nose cone, which I may as well not have, because it needed as much bodywork as this did, and I should have just kept this and saved some money. But I ended up selling that nose cone to somebody, and hopefully they sorted it all out. As I said, I lined it all up on the radiator support panel, made sure the lights and everything all lined up, so it was going to fit okay. So now with the nose sort of in place and finished, it was onto the bonnet. And the old days, everybody used to get the bonnet and they'd press down hard on it and leave a big dent in the crease. And I thought, I tried to remove it with hammers and screwdrivers underneath and get it out. I couldn't work it out, so I welded some washers on there, and then hooked like a slide hammer in it and smacked it out, and actually pulled quite a lot of it out. I was quite surprised how much it came out. And it was bloody hard, it just didn't pop out. I had to really smack the hell out of it. I was quite surprised how tough that was. But I got it out and flattened it all off, and then we've got the bonnet all prepped, ready for its first coat of epoxy. And so I'd done that, and then I blocked all that back and body filled it, and getting ready for final paintwork and prep. So at this time I was also talking to my mate Bill, and he had a HJ Monaro and he needed a few things doing to it, so I said I'd do that for him, and he said, well, what can I do for you? And I was halfway through sanding this bonnet and I'd had enough of it, it was really over it. And I said, well, Bill, you could sand the underneath the bonnet and clean it all up and get it ready for paint for me. And Bill said, yeah, sure, no worries. And I don't think he thought it was going to take him so long. 19 hours later, man, he was filthy every day when he was doing it like this from the dust. But he had done an awesome job, and it come up like the proverbial diamond in the goat's butt. It was so shiny, so by the time he'd finished it looked great. So thanks to Bill, I got in, we primed and undercoated the bonnet and started getting the colour onto it. Because the idea was to get because it was such a big piece and so much work had gone into that bonnet, I wanted to get it all painted, cleared, and then put away out the road so that nothing happened to it. And so we achieved that, and I actually was very, very happy with the result, because I only bought it was a super cheap Pro gun. It was only $69, down from about $110, and it threw down the paint really nice. You know, it's a cheaper gun, maybe you wouldn't have to work so hard with a more expensive gun, but for what we were painting, as I mentioned, it wasn't going to be a show car. I'm really happy with the result, and it's come out quite nice. And I was going to sand it anyway, and I probably could have got away without sanding it. It was that shiny and it come out that nice. It's only just because we'd sprayed it in the shed, you tend to get bits of dust and that in it, and the odd mozzie. So now it was all finished, I wanted to just make sure that the gaps hadn't been closed up too much with the paint. So I wanted to put it back on the car and double check it all, make sure it all fit before I put it away and put it into our, believe it or not, spare bedroom. So once again, I needed a little bit of help.
You got to do it right, otherwise the front will fall off. Keep going. Keep going. Tighter. Pull it tight. Pull it hard. Pull it back this way. Yeah, keep going. Yeah, righto. Do the other one now.
So with the bonnet being finished, we fitted it to the car, and I wanted to make sure that it opened shut all right without hitting anything, which it did. And then I was going to put it away, but then I had to change a plan where I decided I'd colour sand it first and then buff it before putting it away, so it was completely finished. So once the rest of the car was finished, just a matter of pulling it back out of the spare bedroom, with much to my wife's disgust, and putting it onto the car. So it was all done, and I put it to bed in the bedroom, as you do, and it was all finished, and it sat there for another 2 years. Yeah, but not on the bed. But I'd actually sent the motor off to get refreshed and rebuilt, and the guys who were going to do it were well renowned for rebuilding motors and stuff like that. And the Chevy I'd had was out of a ute that my brother-in-law gave me, or ex-brother-in-law gave me back in 2002. And it ran well, but as I mentioned, I had been sick for quite some time, so it had been sitting since 2002, and it was now 2018. So when they honed the bore, he rang me up and said, we have a rust hole after we've honed it. I said, that's okay, just hone it again. He said, well, we did. And he said, you now have a bigger rust hole. So I had to make a decision, either buy a new block, which was going to cost me an arm and leg, or to buy a whole new motor. So I decided to buy a 350 crate motor. So with that decision made, I then had to pay for it. So I still had a heap of parts, which are quite a lot of guards. So I decided to fix all those up and on-sell them, which I did. Also, I made quite a few templates because there was quite a few guards, and so that made life a little bit easier. So we just kept plugging away at that until I got enough money to buy this new motor. And when I got there, I was looking at the motor, and I actually thought, well, just buy the crate motor and stick all the stuff off the 400 on it. But then the 400 had been sitting for, I can't remember how many years, 16 years, so I decided to buy a complete turnkey motor. So the 350 290 performance motor was $4,200, and then to get it turnkey with all the extra stuff on it was $6,200. So it was a pretty cheap motor, and 12 months warranty and all that sort of stuff. So I think we made the right decision in the long run. So to make sure that I had enough money, I kept repairing parts, and I didn't just do metalwork parts, guards and panels and that sort of stuff. Also repaired grills and dash faces and things like that, and on-sold those just to make sure I had enough money to buy any extra stuff that we needed with the motor. So I continued on doing that for quite a bit of the year, just to make sure everything was going to be okay. Now, I didn't pick the motor up straight away. We had a few things not work out the way they should have, so the motor sat at the shop for quite some time, and they were quite happy to leave it there because it was actually paid for in full. And I didn't end up picking up until a couple of months into 2019. And because I am like I am, I'd already been down and looked at the motor and noticed that the motor was black. I wasn't keen on a black motor, so then the colour thing started again. Was it going to be in red? Someone Chevy red, someone said Holden red, someone said whatever, and I thought I might just do it grey. The whole lot grey, no chrome, no nothing. But it didn't quite turn out that way. So now that I knew what was happening with the motor, it was time to get back to the shell and the car and making sure bumpers fit and everything lines up, and doing all the small stuff. And it's amazing how much small stuff there is. So number plate holders and things like that, which had to be stripped back and cleaned all the rust off of them and painted. And it all takes time. I ended up buying some new parts as well because I had a lot of parts. So what I did, I kept the best parts that I had, and then I upgraded whenever I could. So I sold parts and bought new replacement parts because I wanted it to look fairly nice if I could. Then there was a few things that I'd forgotten. There was a rust hole there which I couldn't get to because I had the actual rotisserie mounted onto it. So I had to fix those sorts of things up and then go through and clean all the old lights up. So you just don't realise what's involved when you start getting down to the nitty-gritty of things and how long it all takes. And just cleaning mirrors and stuff like that. So these images are out of order, but once again, it's the small stuff you need to get the bigger stuff on the car. And this was the door latches, and they were filthy dirty and they were old as the cars is. But I didn't And I dosed him in, or soaked him in vinegar for 3 or 4 days, and then cleaned him off with a high pressure gun. Then I dosed them with lithium grease, and they clicked perfect. They sounded great. They worked like brand new latches. I was very impressed with how well they came up with the vinegar. But once we had the doors and that back on, it was towards the end of the year, and we're back to doing body panels and door work and lining things up, and that's the way we finished the year. So we had a big year, and things were rolling along pretty smooth. I just wanted to tell you why Bill was actually sanding my bonnet. Bill's got a HQ Monaro, and someone had put a HJ front on it and converted over to a HJ, but they'd also put, back in the 90s or something like that, they put LTD taillights in it. And apparently once you move to Queensland, you need to have a bumper bar, and because this car never had a bumper bar, Bill had actually paid someone to remove it, and he paid him a few dollars, and they got a bit of a way into it, and then they moved town, and this car was stuck at that bloke's mother's place, and the bloke would only do a little bit on it every time he came back to Brisbane. And so the car was sitting out there for years, and I said to him, mate, it's too much of an expensive car just to have it sitting out at someone's place, and you don't even know where it is now. We did, but I mean, you know what I mean. It could have been anywhere. Someone could have taken it and moved it or whatever. But we picked it up, or Bill picked it up and dropped it off at my place, and the floor, everything was out of whack. The floors were not 15mm out of whack. The back panels, you could see it was kicked out. Now, whether he was going to cut off the tacks and put them in the right place, I'm not too sure. So, but anyway, I went through and cut everything out. Like, everything was full of rust. The rust wasn't removed, so I cleaned out the rust. We matched all the panels up nice and straight, and then I welded it on. And so while I was doing this, Bill was actually sanding my bonnet, and also Bill gave me the lights for the shed as well. So it was, it was a pretty good deal. I was pretty happy with it all, and Bill was happy with it. And the best part was, I had my new super cheap auto spray gun, so I hadn't used that at all. So I got to test it out on Bill's car first. So I was quite happy about that. But there was a lot of grinding, and some of the grinding was underneath the car. So Bill done all that hard yards, and I done the stuff on the top, and we came out pretty good. It was an ex-drag car, so it had flare guards and quite a bit of body filler in it, but it's still a pretty good looking car. And Bill had actually completely rebuilt. Everything underneath was like brand new. The motor was all like brand new. The interior was brand new. It was just really needed a paint job, and then so, but we couldn't do. We were on a budget, so we didn't do the paint job right now. But we'd done enough so it looked nice and tidy to drive around in, and the paint job came out quite well considering the gun. Sounds like I'm a salesperson for SCA. Maybe I should get a job there. But I was very impressed with it, and like the car looked quite nice. And as we mentioned, when Bill could get around it, he would get it painted. There you go, Bill. It's all done, mate. A little bit of orange peel in it. I used to use a new gum which I've not used before. That'll block out, and being outside doesn't help. The colour came out quite nice. And I just blended it halfway down the panel here somewhere. Blended in the old paint, which needs to be rubbed back and when you're ready to get it all done. So yeah, not too bad. It's quite a nice colour actually.